Thank you and welcome to another exciting episode of The Trading Bell. This week on the program, we shall be talking about the real estate agenda. How has the coronavirus pandemic affected a real estate uptick in the country? We'll be speaking to Mr. Dan Awendo, who is the Chief Executive Officer for Home Africa, who's handling one of the largest real estate projects in East and Central Africa. Before we start off, let's take a look at Dan's profile. Dan is a certified public accountant, management consultant, financial analyst, and an advanced management program graduate of Strathmore Business School and IEC Business School in Spain. Awendo has worked in senior management positions in both local and international companies and has been a board member of various companies and learning institutions in Kenya. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining us on the program.
I'm glad to be here today.
Okay. Right now, we're in a catch-22 as an economy. We have real estate taking a hit owing to, of course, the economic activities that have been slowed down by the effects of the coronavirus. The virus has led the government to take up different measures, such as cessation of movement, there's working from home, social distancing, and all this ties down to the economy, especially when we have a population that is trying to save every coin because of the uncertainty in the market and just trying to stay afloat as individuals. When human beings are pushed to the corner, other aspects of their social well-being, such as investment in assets, takes a backseat. From your experience, how have we had an impact, especially on the real estate, since the COVID-19 kicked off in the country?
Well, you're right that investments, especially related to real estate, do take a backseat in situations like this, because at the end of the day, the capital outlay on purchase of a house or purchase of a piece of land is significant in all intents and purposes. And by the time you make the decision to buy an asset of that nature, a lot of the times you've spent a lot of time doing your research, you have borrowed, you probably have saved for a long time.
Sure.
And so you are in a place that you're now ready to invest. But when you're then faced with a pandemic situation where you don't know what's going to happen in the next month, in the next 6 months, very often you tend to take a slow pace at that investment, and you say, look, let me wait and see what will happen in the next couple of months, and if things turn back to normal, then I will go ahead and invest. But in the meantime, I'll wait. And so that affects the real estate players significantly, because when we have units in the market, you're expecting those units to continue selling in the same manner that you are selling. It's not going to happen as easily. And it's all across the market, whether it's the low end of the market or the upper end of the market, because the liquidity game. You want to keep as much liquidity as you can, because you're probably being affected by salary cuts, you're being affected by the supply chain disruption, which makes things more expensive. And so you tend to hold as much as you can to prepare yourself for a worse situation if it does go that way, but also just to cushion yourself from any difficulties that you might find yourself financially in the next so many months.
Interesting.
Yes.
And as a company, have you witnessed any slowdown in terms of uptake of your projects?
Yes, we have, and I think we are not unique in the market, and not just in the real estate space, but also in other areas. But you can't sit and wait for that, to damage your bottom line. So we've taken different steps to try and really increase our coverage from a marketing perspective, but also from a market access perspective. For example, you will still find a significant number of people who have cash, are willing to take a bit of opportunity and therefore ask for large discounts for them to access assets and property that they would not have otherwise been able to access without the pandemic situation. So you have to be very targeted at how you market to this kind of people. They have cash. They are willing to put that cash away in the form of a property, but they want a deal. And so you have to provide flexibility to your team to ensure that you can book this kind of sales. The other thing that, for example, we have to continue doing now and do a lot more is online marketing. We were very comfortable with marketing to a market that is easily accessible physically. But in a pandemic situation where everybody is working from home, there are very few people on the roads moving about. It becomes necessary for us to get online and go online in a much, much bigger way. So we are spending a lot of our resources onto online marketing, digital marketing, and improving that engagement so that we can access more clients.
All right. And Dan, you raise a very important point when you touch on being flexible. Some developers have been stuck on their ground saying, if you can't service your project, if you cannot meet the obligations, they terminate. For you, what has been the experience with your consumers, especially now that we're facing difficult times? Someone perhaps was already taking a project on board, but financially they're unable to progress it on. Have you been able to make any adjustments, and for how long?
You have to make adjustments. Look, at the end of the day, while we are in real estate as a business, the cash flow that comes in is very, very critical. And that cash flow must continue to come in to enable us to continue progressing with our obligations and with our cost management and with other things that we're doing. And so we have two types of clients. We have a client who has continued to pay us over a monthly period. And this client is now facing salary cuts. That client, some clients are coming to a place where they no longer have employment. How do you provide accommodation? So you take a lot longer steps before you terminate than you would on a normal situation. So we have found ourselves with engaging that client to either bring down the monthly payment that they are doing, or even postpone some of the payment plans, so that they have an opportunity to access another job and continue their payment plan. So that's one type of client. But there's also the client who says, look, your land is 5 million shillings. Can we agree a price that allows me to pay over a 6-month period as opposed to a 3-month period? You again have to accommodate that client, because otherwise you're better off with the receivable as your asset than the asset itself, because the asset itself does not put cash in your bank immediately. But if there's a receivable and there's a commitment from the client that this is how I'm going to pay, you're better off with that kind of an arrangement.
Awesome. Talk to us more about your project. It's one of the projects that was touted to be a game changer for East Africa. Of course, funding challenges cropped in, and perhaps the project didn't eventually end up in the manner that you had anticipated. Talk to us about the uptake so far. How many units are remaining, and what are you doing towards plugging in the capital deficit?
Our project is still going to be a game changer. Remember, there are very few golf estates that are next to Nairobi CBD. We are only 22 kilometers away from CBD, which means it's the closest golf estate around Nairobi. We have almost 100 families who live there today. They work in Nairobi. So Nairobi is easily accessible to them. So we feel that we still are going to be the game changer. The difficulty has been the space at which we've been developing the project. And here I mean the infrastructure itself. The roads, the power network, the water, and so on and so forth. So because we've not been able to attract large capital to complete with that infrastructure work immediately, what we've done is to continue selling the parcels that we have and some of the housing units that we have there. And it is from that resource that we are using to build the infrastructure. So that's why it's a bit of a slower pace, but it's progressing. Now, at the end of the day, we have 774 acres of land. A lot of it obviously has been put aside for the golf course, but also a significant part of it has been put out there for residential and commercial and hospitality use. A lot of those parcels are still available. So we have sold not a very big percentage. I think we are at about maybe 45, 50%. We still have a large chunk of land that we would like to be able to sell. We would wish that we can sell it once the infrastructure is completed. But because we are still not there, we have to continue trying to sell to keep the progress of the project moving.
Interesting.
Yes.
And then looking at the project, I do believe it's still a game changer, irrespective of the economic circumstances currently.
Indeed.
And looking at the location, looking at the uniqueness of a golf estate in an urban city, one would say the appetite for investors would definitely be at an all-time high. Is it now a question to perhaps rethink on the pricing?
The question of pricing has not been the problem, actually. We find that even in a pandemic situation, we still have demand for our mega parcels. First of all, because of the uniqueness that you talk about. Secondly, because of the close proximity to a central business district. So we've never really had a major problem with pricing. And even when we do come across situations where people are asking for discounts, we are very flexible on how we can work around pricing, product pricing that allows people to buy, but also buy maybe even in installments. The issue is for us to continue having resources to keep the infrastructure works going on. Pricing, we have not seen that as a big challenge. Because I think from a comparable perspective with the rest of the market, I think we're still at a very good low price.
All right.
Yes.
And talk to us about those also, of course, arrangements for apartments under the Tulip brand. Talk to us about how will this pan out? I know there was a stalemate at some point, but what is the current state of affairs?
So apartments will continue to be a target project for us at MIGA. We have various locations where we have identified as locations for low-level and even high-rise apartments. So we are currently in the process of trying to identify new possible partners, investors, to come and set up shop. And do the apartments there themselves. We originally started with Mitiniscapes, and Mitiniscapes was 82 units, 70 apartments, and 12 villas. All those are now almost fully sold. I think we only have about 3 units remaining. And the reason we developed that was to showcase an example of how the type of apartments we want them done within the MIGA environment. And so we have a few interested parties, China-based type of investors who are looking at different parcels within the plot. We hope that we can also conclude with them shortly. It's just that I think during the pandemic season or time, a lot of these decisions have still been kept aside. But at least as far as discussions are concerned, those have been ongoing for a while.
All right.